the figure of Muhammad as portrayed in the Hadith and in Islamic tradition in general is almost wholly fictional and is based on virtually nothing that can be verified as historically accurate. The bare bones of the argument are this. In the first place, we don't start hearing about biographical details of Muhammad and his life until the 8th century, and particularly in the 9th. The first biography of Muhammad was published over 125 years after his death. And the material that we can verify from being before that is very scanty. The name Muhammad seems to have originated as a title. It's a gerundive participle in Arabic, meaning the one who is being praised, or very simply the praised one. And it seems to have been a title that was applied to several people, and probably also to Jesus himself, before anybody started to refer to this individual as a separate person.
Okay. First of all, Robert talked about evidence for Jesus Christ. Robert, you are a Christian, self-professing Christian. Is that correct?
Yes.
You are a Christian. I find it really difficult to believe that you have belief in Jesus Christ when you're trying to deny the existence of Muhammad. There is no evidence whatsoever from the life of Jesus Christ about Jesus. There is no evidence about the life, even the biography of Jesus Christ, up to the 2nd century. The first fragments of the Gospels we get are from the mid-2nd century, and one of the fragments we have is from the Gospel of John, which is a fragment equal to a credit card size. I mean, just as big as that. So I find it really difficult to believe that you believe in Jesus Christ as a historical figure who existed one time in history, and you accept all the tradition and all the Christian narrative about him. And when it comes to Islam, which is far richer in narrative, in history, in testimonies than the Christian narrative, and you choose to reject it. I'll give you an example in this regard. Some of the people you referred to as scholars, in the beginning of your book, you gave your references, your authorities. You mentioned them: Patricia Crone, Michael Cook, Joseph Schacht, Noldeck, and all these people who have studied the early history of Islam, and you refer to them as your authorities, people who inspired you. But even if you were to study their works carefully, you would have realized that they disagree with your approach. Patricia Crone, for example, states clearly, categorically, for all that we, and I quote, "For all that we probably know more about Muhammad than we do about Jesus, let alone Moses or the Buddha. And we certainly have the potential to know a great deal more. There is no doubt that Muhammad existed." Michael Cook, for example, is another source Robert refers to as his authority. Let me quickly sum up
just quickly, yeah. And
okay. So Michael Cook even states, whom Robert refers to as his source. What does this material tell us? I quote, "We may begin with the major points on which it agrees with the Islamic tradition. It precludes any doubts as to whether Muhammad was a real person. He is named in a Syriac source that is likely to date from the time of the conquest." So Michael Cook is saying this. Major historians in this field are actually confirming.
These are documents which are close to the life of Muhammad.
Absolutely. Within 2 years of his death, someone mentions him by name in Syriac documents. And there is nothing like this for Jesus.
Yeah,
and I find it really difficult to believe as to why Robert believes in Jesus Christ.
Overall, okay, well, three responses there, and perhaps initially, we're not talking about Jesus' existence, but in any case.
But it's relevant because Robert is a Christian. He believes in Christianity. And I find it really disturbing that he accepts the narrative, the Christian narrative about Jesus Christ, and rejects the Muslim narrative about Muhammad, which is far richer, far richer than the Christian narrative.
Is that he believes there is anyway better evidence for Jesus because of the letters of Paul, early historians.
Show me one authority, show me one scholar who ever said that there is more evidence for historical Jesus than historical Muhammad. This is just Robert Spencer speaking. Robert Spencer is not a scholar.
We're discussing whether Muhammad
exists. It is relevant because you are a Christian.
You want to have another debate about did Jesus exist? I'll be glad to do that with you.
Okay, we can leave.
About whether Muhammad existed. Can you give me any indication of the Muhammad of Islam from the first 60 years of Islam?
Good point. Okay, if you find the Jesus question to be difficult, we can drop it and we can move on to Muhammad question. But it's relevant because you're a believer. You are a believer in Christianity and you accept that narrative. The mention of Islam is detailed in the Islamic narrative, and all the non-Islamic narrative, all the non-Islamic material, whether archaeological, numismatic, or literary, supports the Islamic tradition.
And this is from within that period, that sort of 120-year
absolutely,
period.
Absolutely. The scholars have studied this. I'm naming them. Michael Bonner, for example, Fred M. Donner, and Carol Hillenbrand, Robert Hoyland. This is why I exposed his approach. He actually mentions things in his book, and when it comes to debating Muslims, he categorically denies the existence of that evidence. So he talks about the papyri of Malik, yeah, and then he comes up and he says that there is nothing from the lives of those people who wrote the hadith. So this is why Robert again needs to go back to his book and see the people he quotes and how he rejects or how he simply ignores what they have said otherwise.